My boss is an aloof and elegant woman. I got a job as her driver, and on my very first day, I managed to socially humiliate myself. It all started when my uncle told me his wife was about to have their third child. He wanted to take a month-long paternity leave, but was worried about his job being taken over, so he asked me to fill in for him. I thought it would be some kind of dream job. Turns out it was just being a driver for his boss. Seeing the disdain on my face, Uncle chuckled. The pay is $9,000 a month. It's way easier than driving for Uber or delivering food. You just graduated college. Where else can you find such a cushy job? Plus, aren't you short on cash right now? He wasn't wrong. I'd been saving up for a portable recording setup, which costs over $1,000. Working for him for a month would give me $9,000, and combined with my side hustle as a bar singer earning $5,000, I'd have enough. Besides, Uncle mentioned that his boss was a single, stunning beauty. I laughed. Single at 30-something. How stunning could she really be? The next day, I stood beside a sleek Maybach waiting. When she walked over, I had to manually pick my jaw up off the ground. I couldn't help it. I'd been surrounded by 18- and 19-year-old classmates all through college and had never encountered such a mature, elegant woman. And she was gorgeous. My heart skipped a beat. She stopped in front of me, politely nodding. "You must be Ryan. Thank you for helping out," she said, handing me the car keys. Uncle had told me her name was Summer and that she was the CFO of Crescendo Capital. "George said you're a skilled driver and highly recommended you," she added. George, my uncle, had told me yesterday that he had to fight hard to get me this trial day. If the boss was satisfied, I could stay. I had laughed it off at the time. After all, I had a reputation as the speedster back home. But standing in front of this multi-million-dollar luxury car, my hands were trembling. Then I rear-ended someone. A sharp brake, a loud bang, and the guy in front stormed out, cursing up a storm. I apologized profusely, but the moment he saw the car emblem, his attitude softened considerably. "Ryan," Summer called from the backseat. "It's our fault. Just take some photos, exchange contact information, and we'll deal with it later. I'm running late." I sorted things out and got back into the car, only to find a large coffee stain spreading across her elegant silk blouse, not to mention the puddle of coffee on the car floor. My lips twitched. "I'm so sorry," I said. She glanced at me, her voice calm and steady. "We don't have time. I have an important meeting today and I can't show up like this. Take off your white shirt and give it to me." I froze, staring at her in shock. Was this really happening on our first meeting? She looked at me with a mix of disbelief and impatience. Realizing what she meant, I blushed furiously at my own thoughts and quickly took off my shirt. Thank goodness Uncle had warned me to dress formally, so I happened to be wearing a white button-up. I handed it to her, and the privacy partition in the car immediately rose. She changed in the backseat while I sat stiffly in the driver's seat, my breathing involuntarily shallow. Once she was done, I started the car again. Determined to redeem my speedster reputation, I took a deep breath, steadied my nerves, and floored the accelerator. I weaved through traffic, overtook other cars, and pushed the Maybach to its limits. The car's performance was incredible, phenomenal horsepower. I got her to her destination 10 minutes early. Summer stepped out of the car, visibly relieved, but she gave me a complicated look. Something about her expression felt off. "Ryan," she said, "swing by Herm's later and get me a replacement for this blouse. Oh, and buy yourself some clothes, too." She handed me a black credit card. "There's no PIN." I took the card, glanced down at myself, and nearly had a heart attack. A huge tear had appeared under the arm of my undershirt. Great. I stood outside Herm's for 10 minutes, debating whether to walk in wearing a shirt with a gaping hole or just go in shirtless. The former might earn me disdain, but the latter might land me in jail. I opted to keep the shirt on. The moment I walked in, a stunning sales associate greeted me. "Are you Ryan? Hello. Summer mentioned you'd be coming. Please follow me to the VIP room." Despite my ridiculous appearance, her smile didn't falter for a second. I had to admit, high-end salespeople are truly exceptional. They've probably seen it all, from flip-flops to tank tops. "We're out of stock on the blouse Summer wanted," she said. "Would you like to pick something else?" I hesitated. I didn't feel qualified to choose clothes for her. But as I casually flipped through the racks, I spotted a light green dress. Summer's image flashed through my mind, and I instinctively knew it would look amazing on her. The sales associate, perceptive as ever, immediately took it to be wrapped up. Then she directed me to the men's section and dressed me from head to toe. Looking at my reflection in the mirror, I couldn't help but marvel. Damn, I looked good. This was the real me. Pleased with the makeover, I waved my hand and said, "Let's check out." She smiled. "That'll be $7,200. My hand trembled as I reached for my own card, but I quickly tucked it back into my pocket and pulled out Summer's black card. After completing the purchase, she handed me the goods, including a bag Summer had pre-ordered. The sales associate escorted me out with her flawless smile, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slightly off. Back in the car, I suddenly slapped my thigh. Damn it, that was the kind of look you'd give a pretty boy. I drove back to the building and waited until the end of the workday. When I saw Summer walk out of the office tower, she seemed to be in a good mood, probably because today's meeting had gone well. I hurried over with the clothes in hand. Boss, the item you wanted is out of stock. This is something the sales associate recommended instead, I said cautiously, worried she'd mind. She nodded, taking the clothes. Thanks, wait here for a moment, I'll change and return your shirt. I stood by the car waiting. A few minutes later, a figure in pale green slowly approached. My gaze was immediately locked on her, as if a summer breeze had suddenly swept through my chest, making my heart race uncontrollably. She looked stunning. The drive home was quiet. She was reviewing a contract while I kept stealing glances at her through the rearview mirror. Boss, I'll pay you back for the clothes, I said. No need, she replied without looking up. Consider it compensation for borrowing your shirt. Her response left me momentarily speechless. Oh, by the way, I brought back the bag. She gave a non-committal hum, not even sparing it a glance. Aren't you going to check it? I asked, surprised by her indifference. Without lifting her eyes from the contract, she spoke calmly. Sometimes, purchases aren't about liking something, they're about utility. She glanced up briefly, her tone steady and matter-of-fact. Take this morning, for example. This car saved us a lot of time and hassle. The gentleman involved in the fender bender cooperated much more after seeing the car's logo. She was right. Some things hold value not because we like them, but because they fulfill a need or offer convenience in specific situations. Thinking about the incident from this morning left me a little embarrassed, and I didn't press the topic further. When we arrived at her home, she was already in the middle of a phone meeting. I left the car keys inside and quietly signaled to her before slipping away. Walking along the riverside, the night breeze felt a bit chilly. I put on the shirt she'd returned to me. Faint traces of her clean, subtle fragrance clung to the fabric, wrapping around me. It even seemed to carry a bit of her warmth. My ears reddened for no reason, and a pang of regret welled up inside me. Today's mishap surely meant no more job opportunities. There was no way she'd let me continue working for her. I sighed, hands shoved deep into my pockets. Suddenly, I felt something. Pulling it out, I froze. Damn it, I forgot to return her black card. You planning on eating instant noodles for dinner? Gabriel, my roommate, asked. He kicked the bed when he saw me lying there, staring blankly at the card. I ignored him, preoccupied with figuring out how to return the card. Just then, my phone rang. Hello? A sweet female voice came from the other end. Hello, Mr. Ryan. Our company has decided to hire you. Please be ready by 7 o'clock a.m. tomorrow to pick up boss downstairs. Gabriel later said he'd never forget that moment. I, who had been lifeless with 1% battery remaining, suddenly sprang up like a fish leaping out of water, fully revived. I spent the entire night clutching my phone, grinning like a fool. What did he know? He's an eternal single guy who wouldn't understand. The next morning at exactly 7 o'clock a.m., I stood by the Maybach, full of energy. Summer smiled lightly as she handed me the keys. I realized you'd left the keys after you left last night. Keep them, no need to return them. Her fingertips brushed against my palm, sending a pleasant shiver through me. I gripped the car keys tightly, along with the fluttering in my chest. By the way, your bank card, hold on to it. I might need you to buy things for me sometimes. She got into the car, as usual, scanning the day's meeting agenda. Mind turning on the radio? She asked. I nodded and pressed play, but instead of the radio, a familiar melody filled the car. The moment the first note played, I knew. Crap, it was the song I'd been working on, stored on my phone. I'd connected my phone to the car the day before while waiting for her, listening to the half-finished track. The interface must have stayed on that screen. Now, hitting play had accidentally revealed my work. Mortified, I tried to turn it off immediately. It's nice, her voice came from behind me, calm and unhurried. Let it play. My hand trembled. Letting her listen to my unfinished song was somehow even more nerve-wracking than her asking me to take off my shirt yesterday. I tried to console myself. At least it was just the instrumental version. No lyrics, no singing. She wouldn't know it was mine. I glanced at her through the rearview mirror. She seemed genuinely absorbed, as if she was really enjoying it. After a long pause, I couldn't help but ask, "You really think it's good?" "Yes," she replied without looking up, the corners of her lips curving slightly. "I like folk music." She could tell it was folk music, even though it was only half complete. Her words struck a chord in me, a strange sense of joy bubbling up. For the first time, I felt validated. After that, I grew bolder. I started playing new melodies for her during our drives, eagerly awaiting her occasional comments. It was like a child yearning for a pat on the head. She always offered encouragement. "This composer has real talent." I was amazed by her perceptiveness, how she always pinpointed the sections I was most proud of. I came to realize her knowledge of music was no less than mine. I, after all, graduated from a music academy. "I just learned violin as a kid," she said casually. And so, I found myself looking forward more and more to those brief exchanges with her on the road each day. It felt as if I had found a kindred spirit, a connection on a spiritual level, a response from my soul. In just 2 short weeks, I, a lifelong singleton, experienced the intoxicating sensation of a first love. Inspiration flooded me. To come up with more topics to share with her, I began writing new songs every night, eagerly waiting for the next day to play them for her. Although she never knew who the creator was, every bit of feedback from her genuinely affected my emotions. A single word from her could make me so happy that I couldn't sleep, or so distracted that I lost my appetite. No matter what I saw or heard, my first thought was always of her, but I never dared to disturb her lightly. I scrolled through her social media over and over again, practically wearing out the pages. The worst was Friday night, knowing I wouldn't see her for the next 2 days. It felt like I'd lost my soul, sighing endlessly around the house. My roommate, 7, wanted nothing more than to kick me out because of the overwhelming scent of lovesickness emanating from me. But every morning, I'd bounce back full of energy, rushing off to see my muse. That day, after dropping her off at work, she mentioned that she had a dinner that evening and would be late. "I'll wait for you," I blurted out, my ears inexplicably turning red the moment I said it. Damn it, thankfully she didn't notice. Her hand on the car door paused briefly, then she simply said, "Okay," and left. Later that evening, after finishing a new composition, I rubbed my sore neck and realized it was already 10 p.m. Was her dinner still not over? I put my equipment back into the trunk and received a text message. "Ryan, come pick me up at the entrance." I quickly drove over. As soon as I parked, I saw her walking out with a man beside her. He was tall, strikingly handsome, and impeccably dressed, the epitome of the high-end, elite-type modern women adore. I recognized him instantly, Gabriel, the CEO of Horizon Capital, who also happened to be my company's big boss. Summer seemed to have had a drink. While she looked as poised as ever, her steps were slightly unsteady. As she descended the steps, she wobbled, and I rushed forward, only to have a hand stretch out in front of me. Gabriel was quicker, steadying her effortlessly. He turned to glance at me, his expression curious. "I'll drive you home," he said to her. "No need, Ryan can take me. You should get some rest, it's late," she replied. "So he's your new driver?" Gabriel looked at me and frowned. "You've had a drink tonight, I can't let you go alone. Come with me, I need to discuss something with you anyway." With that, he shot me a glance, one filled with a touch of hostility that Summer didn't notice, but we both understood. I had heard rumors about them. Gabriel and Summer were university classmates, 2 years apart. 3 years ago, when she returned to take on the CFO role at Horizon, she became his subordinate. The office gossip suggested Gabriel had been pursuing her for a long time, and many believed they were already a couple, keeping it under wraps for professional reasons. I had no way to verify the truth of these rumors, but as I watched them leave together, their figures perfectly matched, I felt a heavy silence settle over the world. Driving back, I couldn't shake the thought. Was Gabriel really the type she liked? Wealthy, handsome, high status. A fixture on the covers of financial magazines, the kind of man most ordinary people wouldn't dare to dream of. What woman wouldn't be drawn to that? I sighed, reaching for the radio to break the silence. But after just a few notes, I turned it off again. Without her, even the melody seemed to mock me for overestimating myself. Indeed, a woman as exceptional as her deserved someone equally extraordinary. I was out of my depth. The next day, I picked her up as usual, but I didn't ask about the previous night, and she didn't say anything either. It felt like we were the same as before, but also completely different. I still wrote songs for her and eagerly awaited her feedback, but beyond that, I realized there was nothing else for us to talk about, no way to pique her interest further. She belonged to a world entirely different from mine, and so, with polite silence, the days passed. After 2 weeks of being her driver, my contract was up. Tomorrow, Uncle would return to take over the job. I had no reason, no identity that could keep me by her side. On the last night, after dropping her off at home, she asked me what plans I had for the future. Forcing a smile, I replied lightly that I had already found a new job and would start tomorrow. She looked at me as if wanting to say something but holding back. Finally, she nodded and wished me all the best. My heart ached terribly. The memory of our first meeting was still fresh in my mind. Back then, I never imagined I would fall so deeply, only to lose so soundlessly. My love ended before it even began. Want some instant noodles? Seven asked, seeing me sprawled lifelessly on the bed, even more dejected than the last time. He kicked at me. What kind of job is this? The first half of the month you're on fire, the second half you're completely drained. I threw a pillow at him. Scram. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Xavier, the bar owner, reminding me to come in for my gig tonight. Over the past month, my late hours as Summer's driver meant I could only perform at the bar on weekends. Now that the driver job was over, Xavier was eager to get me back full-time. Fine. The rose may be gone, but I still needed the bread. On stage that night, I sang while Xavier watched me from the side, grinning ear to ear, just as I finished a song. He pulled me aside, cursing under his breath. What the hell are you singing? If you keep doing all this melancholic stuff, do you believe I won't smack you? It's Saturday night, happy hour, get it? His spit was almost flying in my face, but no matter how much he ranted, I just stared blankly toward the door. That was when I saw a group of stylishly dressed women walk in, laughing and chatting. I froze for a moment. The woman in the middle was Summer. Luckily, I was standing in the shadows, so she didn't see me as she was led straight upstairs. I caught a snippet of her familiar voice as it floated down. Coming up for a drink? Another woman laughed. Yes or no, you'll find out soon enough. My heart instantly tightened. This bar was fairly well known, not because of the first-floor bar, but because of the second-floor entertainment lounge. The highlight? Buff male hosts with 8-pack abs who would drink, play games, and entertain guests with whatever they wanted. Board games, werewolf games, role-play mysteries, you name it. It was a favorite spot for wealthy women to splurge. While it was technically a legitimate establishment, with men and women drinking and laughing together, who knew what could happen after a few rounds of alcohol? The thought of Summer surrounded by a group of men made my head buzz. I was about to rush upstairs when Xavier grabbed my arm. What are you doing? I'm done singing, I'm going upstairs. He looked me up and down. Ah, you finally figured it out, ready to stop trying. I've been saying all along, with those long legs and good looks of yours, you belong upstairs working. Wait here, I'll ask Seven to take you up. I can't wait. I shook him off and bolted upstairs. Just as I reached the second floor, I bumped into Seven. I asked her anxiously, where did the women who just came in go? Perfect timing, they're short one person over there. Without waiting for an explanation, she led me to a door, instructed the other male hosts to look after me, and brought me inside. My eyes quickly scanned the room, and I spotted Summer sitting in a corner, chatting with her friends. As we entered, all their eyes turned toward us. In that moment, panic hit me. I had rushed up here impulsively without thinking things through. Now, seeing her sitting there so calmly, I suddenly realized I was in deep trouble. I was stuck, no way forward, no way back. Seven instructed us to introduce ourselves, saying whichever lady liked us could keep us around. When it was my turn, I felt my scalp go numb. I didn't even dare glance in Summer's direction, let alone guess what her expression might be. Seven quickly stepped in. He's new today, a bit shy. Ladies, please don't mind him. One of the women chuckled, so cute. Come sit by me. I glanced at her but didn't dare move. Seven gave me a frantic look, urging me to go. I wanted to die. Reluctantly, I shuffled a few steps toward her. Suddenly, Summer's icy voice rang out. Wait. I froze, reflexively turning to look at her. She was staring at me, her tone deliberate. Come sit by me. The room fell silent for 2 seconds. Seven was just about to smooth things over when the women burst into laughter. Wow, Sonny, so this is your type. We were worried you'd get mad and leave if you found out. The woman who had just called me over also chimed in. Hurry, go sit with her. Summer just kept looking at me without saying a word. Her demeanor was always cool, and she had impeccable manners. I'd never seen her lose her temper or show any hostility toward anyone. But her gaze now, I couldn't quite describe it. All I knew was that I felt like I was one step away from being sent straight to hell. It took every ounce of courage I had to sit down beside her. The male host started leading everyone in a game of werewolf. After a few rounds, the group was drinking, singing, and laughing, growing more and more lively. Summer and I sat in a corner of the couch. The others were too preoccupied to notice us. So this is the job you found? She asked, leaning back against the sofa with an unreadable expression. No, it's not, I hurried to explain. I'm here to sing. At that moment, someone on the other side of the room belted out a high note. Can't say I love you out loud. Summer glanced over and remarked drily, well, you're definitely here to sing. Damn it. The more I explained, the worse it sounded. No, I really. Just then, one of the women stood up, slurring slightly. Sunny hasn't been participating much. Not okay, not okay. You need to drink as punishment. Summer couldn't refuse and reluctantly picked up the drink in front of her. Just as she was about to take a sip, I grabbed it from her and smiled at the group. I'll drink for her. Amid cheers and teasing, I downed it in one go. I could feel her surprised gaze on me. Emboldened by the alcohol, I turned to meet her eyes directly for the first time. It must have been the alcohol, but I felt unusually bold. As I placed the glass back down, my hand accidentally brushed hers, which was resting on the sofa. My heart skipped a beat and suddenly all my senses focused on where our pinkies were touching. I should have moved my hand away, but I hesitated. To my surprise, she didn't move hers either. Someone shouted, "Hey, that's too much. You two are making eyes at each other." Their teasing jolted me back to reality. Flustered, I quickly looked away and placed my hand on my lap. Just then, her phone lit up. I caught a glimpse of a string of messages from Gabriel. A wave of emotions surged within me, jealousy mixed with disappointment. "Do you want to call your boyfriend over?" The words were out before I could stop them. I regretted it instantly. The question was way too probing. Normally, I'd never dare ask something like that. She looked at me, her brows furrowing slightly. Her expression was one of exasperation, as if to say, "Would you call your girlfriend to a place like this while you're messing around here with the guys?" I felt the corner of my mouth twitch awkwardly. It was reckless of me, but when she opened her mouth, she said, "I don't have a boyfriend." I looked at her sharply. I had heard the rumors in the company, so absurd that I never even bothered to refute them. Gabriel was my senior and my boss. As long as I worked at Harmony Corp, there was no way anything beyond a professional relationship could happen between us. It took my muddled brain a moment to process what she meant. She didn't have a boyfriend. Gabriel wasn't her boyfriend. Fireworks exploded in my mind at that instant. That feeling, it was like, boys, I'm alive, life is back in full bloom. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might leap out of my chest. I was so thrilled that even my hands were trembling slightly. A few women nearby, noticing how long we'd been talking, seemed annoyed and brought over 2 bottles of wine, pushing them toward us and insisting we drink. There was no way I'd let her drink. I stepped up and drank on her behalf. A miracle occurred. Just moments ago, the wine had tasted bitter and sour like heartbreak, but now every sip was sweet. I was still a little lightheaded when she suddenly stood up. "I need to take a call," she said. I was puzzled. Her phone hadn't even lit up earlier. Feeling uneasy, I made an excuse to use the restroom and followed her out. She was leaning against the doorframe. When she saw me come out, she said, "Wait here for me," then stepped away to take the call. After a brief conversation, she came back, grabbed her bag, and said to the others, "Something came up at work, I have to leave." As she walked out, she glanced back at me, who was still standing there dumbfounded. Raising an eyebrow, she said, "What, not coming? Want them to make you drink more?" Sitting in her car, waiting for the driver she'd called to arrive, I closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep. Deep down, I was endlessly grateful it was Saturday. Her regular driver, my uncle, was off today. I heard her ask, "Where do you live? I'll drop you off first." I kept my eyes shut tight, mentally coaching myself. "Don't say it, Ryan, hold it in. No matter what, don't say it." After asking a few more times and getting no response, she sighed and told the driver, "Take us to Four Seasons Residences." Four Seasons Residences. Of course, I knew that place all too well. It was where I picked her up and dropped her off every day. I bit my lip to stop myself from grinning. Suddenly, I caught a faint scent of her perfume. My heart skipped a beat. Peeking through barely opened eyes, I saw her leaning over to fasten my seatbelt. Her face grew closer and closer until it was just inches away from mine. I could almost hear her soft breathing. A stray strand of her hair brushed against my cheek, falling onto my neck, sending my nerves into overdrive. I froze completely. My brain buzzed and I almost lost control and reached out to hug her. Desperately, I pinched my thigh to calm myself down. The ride felt torturously long, but we finally arrived. This was my first time at her place. And on the first night, I was already staying over. What an achievement. I was so excited that I tossed and turned in bed for half the night before finally falling asleep out of sheer exhaustion. The next morning, I heard some noise coming from outside. Stepping out, I saw Summer busy in the kitchen. She noticed me and said, "Breakfast is almost ready, just wait a little bit." Then she shut the kitchen door. I couldn't believe it. I was about to eat a breakfast she had cooked. Even if last night's drinking had caused a stomach ulcer, it would have been worth it. As I considered offering to help in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. "Sonny, are you home?" I froze. That was Gabriel's voice. Oh no. If he saw me here this early in the morning, the misunderstanding would be massive. Then again, a massive misunderstanding. I glanced toward Summer. The noise from the kitchen was loud and she hadn't heard a thing. Heaven was on my side. I dashed into the bathroom, took off my shirt, splashed water on myself, grabbed a towel and started drying off as I went to open the door. "Coming," I muttered, making sure to look like I'd just stepped out of the shower. Gabriel stood outside, his pupils dilating in shock when he saw me, shirtless, wet, and holding a towel. Feigning surprise, I said, "Boss Gabriel, what brings you here? Something urgent this early. What are you doing here? Where's Summer?" He demanded, pushing past me toward the door. I had anticipated this. Blocking the doorway with my foot, I stopped him. "Sonny's still in the shower. I heard the doorbell and came out first," I said with a smirk. His eyes flared with anger. "Move, what did you do to her?" From the kitchen, Summer's voice called out, "Ryan, was that the doorbell?" "Yes, don't worry about it, just keep doing your thing," I replied quickly. "Okay," she said, shutting the kitchen door again. What impeccable timing. She was a natural genius. I nearly burst out laughing but held it in as I turned back to Gabriel. "Boss Gabriel, you heard her. We're all adults here. Everything's consensual." I paused for effect. "Would you like to come in and sit for a bit?" Furious, he shoved me aside and stormed off. I closed the door and nearly doubled over laughing. But when I turned around, Summer was standing there, looking somewhat awkward. "What are you doing?" she asked. I quickly wiped the water off my body with the towel. "It's hot, got all sweaty, haha." A cool breeze blew in and I sneezed 3 times in a row. Her expression grew even more complicated. "Go put on some clothes." During breakfast, she asked, "How much do you make at that job?" I almost spat out my porridge, coughing twice before answering honestly. She didn't say anything, but the look in her eyes made me feel like she thought I'd sold not just my soul, but also my body. "No, I'm just a singer at the bar," I blurted out. "Yesterday, I only went because I saw you." I stopped mid-sentence, realizing I'd nearly slipped. I had no idea if she believed me. After a moment's silence, she sighed. "Ryan, you shouldn't waste your time like this. I'll let you go. I didn't want to see you doing these things." She looked at me intently, her eyes filled with disappointment. It felt like I'd been struck by a heavy blow. My mood plummeted instantly, sinking to rock bottom. Youth is not an excuse for recklessness. Perhaps you should figure out what you truly want and what you're willing to give in return. She shook her head and stopped looking at me. "Finish your breakfast and head back," she said. My face burned with embarrassment, and my head felt like it was on fire. She must be completely disappointed in me, wasting my life chasing small, insignificant gains, neglecting what truly matters. Perhaps this is how she sees me. A failure. I walked home, lost in thought. By the time I got there, my mind was made up. She was right. I pulled myself together, cleaned up, and started my live stream. For the past few years, I had been sharing my music online, slowly building a small but loyal fanbase who called me a niche artist. I even had my own album and artist page on a major music platform. Occasionally, I performed live for my fans in my stream. Just as I was about to end my stream that day, I received a donation of $5,300 from a fan with the username Mirror. The message attached to the donation was a request. Stream every night for the rest of the month. Agreeing to this would mean I couldn't perform at the bar where I usually worked as a singer. However, live streaming was a better way to grow my fanbase. After some thought, I agreed. Shortly after, Mirror sent me a private message with an image. A recruitment flyer for a singer-songwriter boot camp hosted by a major video platform in collaboration with a leading entertainment company. It was the flagship talent show of the year, designed to produce a new generation of idols, and singer-songwriters were the most sought-after participants. The flyer hadn't been publicly released yet, so it seemed like insider information. I quickly asked Mirror where they got the info, but they had already gone offline, leaving only one message. "You deserve a bigger stage, Ryan. Don't waste your talent." I signed up for the boot camp and was soon selected for the show. Drawing inspiration from the month I had spent as Summer's driver, I poured all my creativity into my music. Round after round, I advanced, eventually making it to the top 10. During this time, I devoted myself entirely to songwriting outside of the show recordings. I took a break from live streaming, and my fans were incredibly supportive. As the show aired, my popularity skyrocketed. Online, people started speculating that I could win the whole competition. My longtime fans, who had followed me for 3 or 4 years, were overjoyed, leaving messages like, "Finally, our underrated singer is getting the recognition he deserves." But I knew I couldn't stop or rest before success was within my grasp. I had to seize this opportunity with everything I had. I had made up my mind. On the day I debuted as the winner, I would confess my feelings to Summer. By then, I hoped to be standing on equal footing with her, becoming someone worthy of her admiration. Only then would I tell her, openly and honestly, how I felt. As the competition intensified, I was rehearsing with my band one day when a small commotion broke out on set. The executive producer was walking in with a tall, distinguished man, drawing the attention of every woman in the room. "Wow, he's so handsome. Is he a celebrity?" someone whispered. "No, he's the owner of Horizon Capital, our sponsor," another replied. "No wonder he carries himself so well." I was taken aback when I realized it was Gabriel. Why was he here? Was Horizon Capital one of the show's investors? While I was lost in thought, the executive producer brought Gabriel over to me. "This is Ryan," the producer said. "He's quite popular online and one of our top contenders." Gabriel smirked at me. "Is that so?" Just then, the producer was called away, leaving the two of us alone. "Do you really think Summer would ever be interested in you, Ryan?" Gabriel sneered. "Or are you naive enough to believe you can become a star and rise to the top?" I shrugged. "Whether Summer likes me or not, I don't know. But I'm sure she doesn't like you." His expression darkened. "Don't think I don't know about your little stunt that night. She only let you stay out of pity. Don't fool yourself into thinking you're anything special." "At least I stayed the night," I shot back, twisting the knife. "And she even made me breakfast." That struck a nerve. Just as he was about to lash out, the producer returned. "Gabriel, the creative director, is here. Shall we head over?" Gabriel suppressed his anger, turning to the producer with a tight smile. "This show carries high expectations from all parties involved. The chosen artists must have both talent and integrity. If anyone lacks moral character, the higher they climb, the harder they'll fall. Such individuals would also bring significant damage to our brand." With that, he shot me a pointed glance before walking away, leaving the room buzzing with speculation. That night I was moved to the worst, most isolated dorm. I was also given the least favorable time slots for the practice rooms and songwriting studios, having to wait until all the other contestants were finished. With the competition so fierce, falling behind even slightly could spell disaster. I grew anxious and decided to speak with the executive producer. However, outside their office, I overheard a conversation. "There's nothing I can do," the producer said. "He offended the wrong person." "But Ryan is incredibly talented," another voice argued. "You should see for yourself." In the company, those ambitious young men, who among them lacked talent or ability, but talent was worth nothing without capital. Capital was the true king. His chances of winning were highly anticipated. If he were eliminated, the audience would likely accuse the show of being rigged. "Don't make it so obvious," the director was advised. "Let him reach the finals. Once in the top 5, it's a fair fight. At that stage, who could say who's stronger? Besides, he doesn't even have proper equipment to practice his songs. It's not surprising if he doesn't measure up. He can stop at 4th place, a close loss. His fans won't have much to say about it." The executive director sighed. "I understand, it's just a pity." Victoria, the project manager, scoffed. "There's nothing to pity. The music industry doesn't lack singers like him, but we can't afford to lose Harmony Investments as our sponsor." The final was a live broadcast, with viewer votes deciding the rankings. Without external help, I could only rely on myself. As long as I could produce a performance that was powerful enough, I believed there was no obstacle I couldn't overcome. I wanted Summer to see me, to see the version of me standing on that stage. On the day of the finals, the production team invited the most popular actress at the time, Emma, to be present at the live show. Her attendance drove countless fans to flood the streaming platform. Based on previous results, I was the last to perform. By the time the first 4 contestants had finished their performances, the atmosphere at the venue had already reached its peak. The advantage of being the closing act was that the audience was already fully engaged. The downside, however, was that if I failed to maintain that energy, I'd be eliminated without a doubt. Standing on the pitch-black stage, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, waiting for the lights to come on. In that moment, I abandoned the song I had originally prepared for the finale. After overhearing the conversation between the director and Victoria, I had already made up my mind. I wanted to convey everything I needed to say through this final performance, to let everyone hear it. Talent would not stay buried forever. The prelude began with rap, where I directly expressed my stance, exploited, trampled upon, struggling at the bottom. But the resilience in life would never bend or break. For the verse, I replaced the chords with augmented fourths. This adjustment gave the song a heavier, more textured atmosphere, creating emotional resonance and unforgettable moments. The live band was incredibly professional, seamlessly alternating between harmony and dissonance, continuously propelling the music forward. The production team wouldn't tamper with the live performance, as it would affect the broadcast quality, making them look bad. So I trusted the band to deliver their best. Before moving into the chorus, the strings laid a major chord foundation, with brass instruments driving the sound upward. Then a timpani note pushed the emotions to their peak. The chorus kicked in, with a hook so captivating it gripped everyone. This song, a fierce critique of capitalism, struck a chord with every working-class individual, igniting a fiery passion in the audience. Even after the performance ended, the crowd erupted into thunderous applause and cheers. When the stage lights came back on, Emma, unable to contain her excitement, stood up and shouted toward the stage, "Ryan, you're my hero." I smiled, catching my breath and calming my emotions. At that moment, I had no idea that this song would break the show's streaming records, or that it would become my signature piece, my crowning achievement. It was even hailed as a soul-stirring battle anthem in online communities, though I found it a bit over the top. Still, I liked it. The judges were visibly moved as they gave their highest praise. "Ryan, I never expected you to deliver such a powerful performance. You feel like a one-man army, fighting to the death with no retreat. You even brought out my inner fanboy and made me tear up." The audience burst into laughter at his comment. After some light banter with the host, the moment finally came to announce the results. Though I was nervous, I felt at peace. I had done everything within my power. When the host called my name, when the applause, flowers, and confetti surrounded me, I was almost at a loss for words. As everyone hugged and congratulated me passionately, my eyes scanned the crowd. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw Summer's silhouette. Just as quickly, it disappeared from view, and when I looked again, there was nothing. Was it an illusion? The thought passed briefly before I was pulled back into the present. After the competition ended, I couldn't wait to leave the venue. I ran straight to Summer's apartment complex, sprinting through the sprawling neighborhood. Breathless, I finally stopped in front of her building. My heart pounded uncontrollably as I suddenly noticed two figures standing face to face under a street lamp ahead. In the soft glow of the streetlight, their shadows looked so tender. She smiled at him, turned to leave, but he reached out and pulled her into his arms without hesitation. My heart felt like it had been struck with a heavy blow. I turned abruptly, hiding myself in the shadows, pressing my back against the wall. My chest felt tight, suffocated, as though something was clogging it. My hands hung limply at my sides, my gaze falling on the trophy I held. At that moment, I realized that everything I had done was utterly unnecessary. I was so unnecessary. I closed my eyes, forcing back the tears. In a daze, I left the apartment complex. By the roadside, a Maybach was parked. The driver suddenly rolled down the window and called out, "Hey, kiddo." I almost cursed it out loud. Who was this guy taking liberties with me? But then I recognized him and reluctantly greeted, "Uncle." "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Just dropped boss off," he replied. "Why, didn't you know she went to your show tonight?" I was stunned. "She really came to the show?" "Of course," Uncle said with a grin. "Kiddo, you're famous now. Don't forget about your dear uncle. I could even be your chauffeur." He added with a sigh, "Boss quit her job, you know." I was startled. When did this happen? Why? Just tonight, after leaving the live show, she called Gabriel from the car and told him that her resignation letter had already been sent to his inbox. Gabriel rushed over to find her right away. "I just saw him dash into the neighborhood, about 10 minutes before you got here." My muddled mind suddenly replayed what she had said that day at the bar. She mentioned that as long as she stayed at H&Q, there would be no chance of developing any other kind of relationship with Gabriel. I let out a bitter laugh. So was she resigning because of Gabriel? George hesitated for a moment before speaking haltingly. "Actually, Uncle didn't tell you something. It wasn't me who recommended you to be the boss's driver. It was the boss herself who asked me to suggest you for the role." I stared at his mouth as he spoke, but the words coming out made no sense to me. Wait, hold on. What are you saying? She specifically requested me. How would she even know who I am? Exactly, I thought it was strange too, so I asked her, and guess what she said? She told me she's been your fan for 3 years. He patted me on the shoulder. At the time, I didn't believe a word she said. But after seeing your performance today, Uncle believes her now. Don't blame me, okay? Back then, I just wanted to score some points with you. You mentioned wanting to buy music equipment but didn't have the money, remember? This was the perfect job landing right in your lap. This revelation hit me like a thunderbolt on a clear day, leaving me utterly dumbfounded. Suddenly, everything made sense. I jumped up and sprinted toward the neighborhood. It turned out that it was never me chasing her, it was her waiting for me. When I got back, she was the only one standing under the street lamp. Gasping for air, I walked toward her step by step. "Gabriel's gone?" I asked. She looked a little embarrassed. "You saw that?" Gabriel found out I was resigning and tried to persuade me to stay. But I know what he's done, and I can't condone his behavior. I've decided I can no longer work with him. He got a bit emotional when I told him, so he hugged me. But don't worry, I've taken care of it. It was the first time she had explained so much to me so clearly. All my grievances melted away, replaced entirely by joy. So you went to the live show to ensure the data's accuracy. You represented H and Q so they wouldn't dare mess things up. She smiled gently. It's what you deserved, Summer. I just wanted you to be the one to see it. I saw it, I replied. She looked at me. I saw you 3 years ago. That was when I first joined H and Q and attended an external event. It was the inauguration of the new music building funded by H and Q. I represented the company at the celebration. You were the guest performer, singing a song on stage. She softly hummed the melody. I still remember the tune to this day. I really liked it. So after that, I started following your new songs. Her words hit me like a revelation. I remembered the event she mentioned. At the time, I was the campus singing competition champion, so I was often invited to perform at school events. That particular event was quite grand, but I had no idea she had been sitting in the audience, looking up at me on stage. Mira, was you too, wasn't it? I asked. She smiled and nodded. But I still had one question. If you wanted to help me, you could have just recommended me to Stellar Entertainment. They would have valued me. Why go through all this trouble, asking Uncle to get me hired as your driver? She suddenly looked a little shy. Entertainment companies are full of young, beautiful, and charming women. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. Was she jealous? I didn't want to create so many competitors for myself, she said, lowering her gaze. I'm much older than you. Honestly, I wasn't confident you'd like me. I like you, I blurted out, my tone serious and unwavering. She froze for a moment, then smiled. Ryan, my new company officially starts tomorrow. I still need a driver to take me to and from work every day. And the payment is, she pointed to her house, the right to live in this house. Her voice wavered slightly. Will you accept? I shook my head. Not enough. Then, under her surprised gaze, I leaned down and kissed her lips. Now it's enough, I whispered.